Check 1, 2. Mic check. Ba-da-bum. Kobi. What's happening, bro?
Hey.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep, I can hear you good. How about me? Can you hear me?
You're coming in loud and clear.
Cool. Oops.
Okay.
Excellent.
Yeah. Okay, man, what's going on, brother? How are you feeling?
Pretty good. Yeah, I think we could probably start with going over some of the callbacks or just callbacks in general. I mean, I don't want to take like all time on that.
Okay.
But I think maybe that would be a good place to sort of start at least.
Sure.
And then
Okay.
go from there.
So can you see my screen right now?
Yes, I can.
With my dogs? Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Sweet pups. You got dogs.
I have one, yeah. My dogs. I'll show you him. Instagram. Well, I don't want to burn your time since we're on the clock, but I will send it to you thing. Okay, so I got a tutoring file empty in here. I'm going to make a new file for callbacks. Cool. And so basic function syntax, right? So let's make a var adder, which takes in num1 and num2, and then we let's say solution equals num1 plus num2, and then we want to console log our solution. So what does it have issue? Oh, var adder equals function. How about that? Yeah, okay, that's better. So that makes sense, right? But regular function syntax.
Yep.
And then if we were going to call the adder function, we'd say adder to 2, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one thing, now that we know how to use node, we can always check our stuff. What do I call it? Callbacks. There, boom. And we get our console log 4. So if we wanted, say we had, I'm trying to think another function here called var printit, which takes in some param and console logs that param. Okay. So our printit, oh, I screwed up my equals function. Screwed up my syntax a little bit. So if I want to use printit in my adder function, like say I didn't want to use this piece, I could put in another parameter called callback into this function.
Okay.
And it would take in, we can name it whatever we want. We use CV to stand for callback.
Right.
And then I can say in here, CB, our solution. Because the function that I'm going to use for this, printit, takes in a parameter and prints that parameter. So right now, if I run this in node, CB is not a function. Okay, print it. I got an error because I didn't know what CB was, but I'm trying to use it as a function here.
Okay.
So here I pass it in as a parameter. Let's try again. Okay, and it printed 4. But in our adder function, we don't tell it to print, right? It's in our printit function. So when I call the adder function, the first parameter I give it is the number 1. The second I give it is number 2. And the third parameter is a function, callback function. And then down here, I pass our solution into my callback function. So when I pass printit in as the third parameter right here, printit basically goes right there,
right,
and right there. And so it's a callback is just anytime we want to pass in a function as an argument, we call that a callback function. So if we're calling a function inside of a function, and like in this case, we could just say print it because this is a globally scoped function. I could just do this and it would still know what to do. If we do this and run this code, we still get 4 because it knows it has access to print it. But if we're sending files or sending data from multiple files like we do in our with our API routes and stuff, we're sending some data from the front end and then it goes into our API routes, and that's talking to a controller, and you're getting parameters passed back and forth where like it's not going to have access to this print it function.
Right.
Instead, we just put it in here as a callback.
Okay.
And when we call the function, we call print it. So, I mean, fundamentally, a callback function is just any function that we pass in as a parameter to another function.
Right.
So in this case, so it gets more complicated like when we chain them together. But like when we were building our own ORM and we were passing that data back and forth. But now that we're using sequelize, we don't really have to worry about it too much. So this is just something you can do if you ever need to use a function inside another function, but it's not going to have access to it through the global scope, then throw it in as a callback function. But I wouldn't stress about it too much. It's not going to be a huge piece or something that you need to do all the time. The important thing to know is just, how they work on a basic level, which is kind of what we got going on there.
Yeah, and I mean, it makes sense. I mean, it just sort of, at first, it was just like, whoa, what's going on? Like, why is this all the way down here, and why isn't it all in one thing? And yeah, but now because we're using equalize or equalize, it just sort of negates that whole.
We don't need to do it as much. There'll still be instances when you want to use callback functions, but for the most part, we won't. So just to verify, if I made another function called subtractor, I don't know, we'll make up a word, equals function, it's going to take in a couple parameters, and our solution is going to be equal to num1 minus num2. So if I wanted to print this here and using our print it, but not just call it, not just write print it, rather than do this, how would you modify this function to need that?
Wouldn't you first need to, after num2, write CB?
Exactly.
And then you would, like you would down at bottom adder, but it would be CB. Or no, it would be, it would be CB, and then it would be num1, num2.
You could do it like that, num1 minus num2, but we have this solution variable here. So remember, our print it console just takes in a parameter and then prints it. So if we want to just print the solution, I can just feed it solution.
So it would just be solution. Okay.
Exactly. Cool. If I pass in num1, num2 like this, I'm not sure what would happen. I don't think it's going to work. Subtractor, let's say 4 minus 2. And let's give it print it. And let's console, or let's comment that one out so we don't get that answer. So I got 4, which is, what is happening there? Oh, because I used num1 exactly. We passed in 4 as num1. So our console log of param is just reading the first parameter and printing 4.
Oh, okay.
So instead of this, if we type solution, we should get 2.
Yep. Which we did. I see now. Okay, got it.
Cool. So, okay, that's basic, callbacks 101. Sometimes they're confusing to get your head around in confusing examples. So it's like a simple example sometimes helps just to get the basic, of how that callback function works.
Yeah. No, that's great. And then I guess I think it would probably be a good thing to go through like the Heroku deployment.
Okay. Okay.
Or actually, you know what? There's a video and stuff for that. I can do that. I can
Okay.
do that on my own.
No worries. Um, how'd you feel today about the classwork?
It was confusing. But it's, I was like maybe like one step behind on on the activities, and then I would finish um like as he was just starting to get the class back together.
Sure. Perfect.
So I mean, I was getting it. Um and then there were some pieces that were like, all right, well, I got this far, but like I was totally writing something, or like I was writing the right code. I was just like missing one piece or forgot to do a step or whatever. So that was really it. Um, yeah.
Oh, sorry, I muted myself.
Oh, no problem.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Today is a big day. Like
Yeah.
getting this like MVC, like the model view controller aspect down, and um, it's like we give you MVCs, ORMs, and sequelize kind of all at once, and it gets
Yeah.
a little overwhelming. So
Yeah. It's a little difficult to juggle them all, but I mean, I understand how like they work to not necessarily together, but they work together.
yeah. So I mean, do you want to go through an exercise like the Star Wars one we skipped over in class and maybe do it together?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Um, okay, so I'm not sure what this app is or why he skipped over this activity, but we went from 3 to 5. So
Right.
um, install the sequelize and MySQL2 npm packages, delete the ORM, just kind of reading over the directions, making sure this is what
Yeah.
you want. Create a model folder with the character file and the model. Okay, as detailed. Model out the character table as detailed in the schema file. Remove all references to the old RAM, ORM. Use sequelize methods in place of the ORM calls, and update connection.js to use sequelize instead of the MySQL package. Okay, we could do this.
Cool.
We can make it a little better too and use um, some of the tools that we learned earlier today. But
Yeah.
the
Cool.
first thing we need to do is install the sequelize and MySQL2 npm packages. So
Right.
in these activities, we can look in the package JSON and see that they already list their dependencies as Express and MySQL.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it wants sequelize and MySQL2. So this isn't really good for us. So I'm going to delete the old package JSON and
Okay.
just make a new one. So
Okay.
I I like to right click open a terminal on my
Yep.
server.js. And so if I want to, let's pull this one over here. If I want to install sequelize and MySQL2, what would be the steps? So this is like a project from scratch. We don't have a package JSON.
Okay. So if you don't have anything, wouldn't you need to do npm init -y?
Absolutely.
All right.
So we npm init, and that creates this package JSON for us. And
Okay.
a piece we need to just make sure is in there is the start, because if we're deploying something, which we're not in this case, but just something for you to look at going forward,
Yeah.
is that we need this start code so that when we put it on Heroku, their server looks for a starting script and it literally types node server.js like into its command line, which is how
Okay.
we start our app also. Um, so
Okay.
so that piece is there. And what were the packages we need? Sequelize and MySQL2.
All
So
right.
remember the command for installing packages?
Yeah. So it would be npm install or npm I and sequelize space MySQL2. Yep.
Perfect. Easy. Sometimes this errors out. If it like is erroring out, I delete my package JSON and delete my node modules file, npm
Okay.
init, and then I'll like install them one at a time. Uh, I don't know
Okay.
exactly what goes wrong, but if you're ever just getting weird errors just trying to install your stuff, I would like delete these three. Delete my package lock, and my node modules, because this is
Okay.
pretty quick to get it going again.
Right.
Just npm init y and then install your packages. Now we can see in our package JSON down here it has
Yeah.
dependencies. So
Nice.
if you push this to GitHub and then later on, delete it off your computer, and then later on you clone this repo because you want to do some more work on it. If the repo has this package JSON in it, if we just npm I, it looks in the package JSON and installs these dependencies for us.
Okay.
So that's why it's like you can look in some of the class activities, like if I open a random one up here and look at the package JSON, it's already got the dependencies written out there.
Right.
So you can just npm I and it will install these three things, and that's how it knows.
And is that sort of how, like, not like a normal work environment, but like a work environment should be, in a sense? Like you're either working, like you're either coming into a project that has the packages already installed, or would you be installing them depending on what? I mean, I guess that's a what if.
Yeah, but you're right though. I mean, like most big projects, it might have 10 of these or something. People have been working on it for years or something, and then you could just clone it in npm I, and then you'd have all your dependencies.
Okay.
But if you're building your project from scratch, you're going to have to go through your npm init and npm install steps to get
Exactly.
there.
Like if you're making an app from scratch.
Yeah, like on some of your homeworks or something.
Okay, cool.
And it wouldn't be bad to like build an app that does nothing except like sends a hello world when you hit the GET request, and like connects a MySQL database, and like you could build like a boilerplate code for yourself using these templates, and then when you need to make a new full stack app, you clone that repo down and then edit it for your app rather than have to build everything from scratch every time.
It's a really good idea. I think that might be like a first project after the classes. For sure.
We're learning so many new technologies and stuff. It keeps changing, so it's less critical, but just something to think about. I asked John, and he was like, "Yeah, I have a few templates that I use, and like, I have one that's just like my HTML doc that links to my CSS with like a body background color of blue and a JavaScript that just says console logs hello." And so it's like just a basic front end app that has the files built and connected, and it's like that saves you a couple steps.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's definitely something that I think will come in handy in the future.
Okay, so if we deleted our config folder, which is not what it's telling us to do in these instructions, but now that we're using the sequelize command line interface,
right?
Do you remember those commands? I'm not sure I do.
Yeah, it was like sequelize. Let me think. It was
it doesn't. I think it was sequelize init models, and there was another one, but I feel like I must be forgetting some step because
it was init models, and so like after init models and init something else.
Config. Okay, sequelize CLI got one of those. I made my config, but it didn't like my
model.
Sequelize init.
Oh, maybe it's case sensitive. I think.
QUELIze sequelize init models. There it goes. You are right. So if we sequelize init models, we'll make our models folder for us with our index.js in it. And like this file does a lot of stuff on its own. It's like we can look through it and figure out what it's doing. But basically what it does is it looks for more models in our models folder and adds them to our database.
Okay.
For us. It'll create our table and it will connect it for us so we don't have to. And then in config, it sets up a development environment, a test environment, a production environment. And right now we're doing everything on our development environment.
Right.
But when you deploy to Heroku, you'll probably need to put in the relevant information here into the production one also.
Okay.
I'm not sure, honestly, how it knows which of these to use, but that would be a question we could Google, or we could also, ask John to.
Yeah, I'm sure other people are wondering too.
Not super critical. So I know if we're going to use MySQL, I got to put my password in here.
Yep.
Say password, and then our database. It depends on the database for this app.
Right.
So let's go back.
And that always varies, right?
Exactly.
Depending what project you're working on, right there.
Exactly. And so the one thing that sequelize doesn't do for us is actually create the database. So that's
right.
the piece we still have to do. So we can go through these steps. Delete the ORM from config.
Cool. We just did that.
The whole config thing.
Yep.
Create a model folder with character.js file in the model. So we have models. So let's make another file called characters. Character. It's character single.js. So, okay, we just create that. We'll just initialize it, just create it, and go through these steps. In there, model out the character table as detailed in the schema SQL file located in the root of this project directory. So we can look at the schema file. You can see this. Let's go to Workbench because we're going to have to create this database.
I was also a little confused about just the syntax quotation stuff that Workbench is going on with.
Right here. Yeah, I don't know. Whoever did this solution put this in.
Yeah.
I think I can Control F2 all of those and delete them.
No way.
And I think this will work. Yeah, you know how you can if you highlight something, you can Control D to select the next one. Like every time you Control D, it gets another.
Yep.
If you have something highlighted and you Control F2, it highlights all of them on
that
page. You have to be careful because sometimes this character that you're trying to remove will also be in the middle of a URL or like an API key or some path that you don't expect, and you can break things with that. But on this page where I can see the whole code, it's pretty safe. So
nice.
I'm not going to create the table, but I am going to do this stuff.
Cool.
And so over here, I got Workbench. I got MySQL, connect to it. I'm just going to open up a new little file, Scratchpad, type that in and run it. Okay. So now if we refresh over here, we can see the Star Wars database, which I just created. And then inside it, there's no tables, which makes sense because we haven't made a table yet.
Right.
So then back in here, it wants us to build a model that matches this schema. But the first thing I'm going to do is take this database name and put it in here.
Right.
Use the Star Wars database. Okay. So we'll keep this open as a reference and close our config JSON because we handled that. I'd like to put this back on the side. Let's keep the schema over here for reference too. And then I also want a reference for how to do this code because we just haven't done it a lot. So sequelize, which looks like I was working on 9 earlier in our models. I had a to-do model. I'm just going to copy that whole thing and paste it in here to start. Now, this model that we used for to-do is not going to match this, right? So we're going to have to change it. The first thing is we want to create a table called all characters.
Right.
So we're going to say all characters. And then sequelize defined. This is where it gets the name of the table.
Mm-hmm.
So I would just call it characters personally rather
Mm-hmm.
than all characters. Let's do it like that, huh?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Characters. And we say define character. This is a character model.
Okay.
Singular. And then sequelize will take our model for a character and go, oh, if I'm going to get a bunch of character models, I should make a table called characters to hold them.
Right.
So this is what gets pluralized, not this. So like this right here is the piece that actually becomes the table name.
Okay, that's like what Alejandro was asking, and John didn't exactly.
Yeah, sometimes he doesn't totally, and everyone, you know, like sometimes we don't totally understand the question being asked, and he'll give you an
Yeah,
answer that's like, wait, that's not what I was looking for.
yeah. No worries. I thought it was kind of funny because I was like, wait a minute, that's not at all like what he was asking, but all good. So that actually makes a lot of sense now to me, actually seeing it side by side. Like
Yeah,
that's the character that
helps.
turns into characters on the table.
And then when we return, we're going to need to return character.
Characters.
Okay.
Character.
It's this
Right.
piece that we're returning.
Right.
Because this piece is this whole bit. So the first thing we see in our table is an ID and a primary key. And we actually, in our sequelize table, normally if we're building the table ourselves, we have to say ID as an integer with a certain width of the table that can take a certain amount of numbers. Basically, we tell it to auto increment and not be null. Sequelize actually does this for us, so we don't actually have to put an ID in here at all.
Okay.
It will give it an ID and make it the primary key on its own. So if you look at old sequelize code online, like Stack Overflow, it'll have an example of setting like an ID key and saying primary key, and there's a way you can define it yourself if you want to.
Okay.
But for the most part, like we just don't need to do this if we're using sequelize. So the first piece, these are really the pieces that we need to implement in here. And so it goes column name, data type, basically. So in here, this is the column name, right?
Okay.
And so if I put that there, and then I say, what type is it? Varchar is a string, right?
Okay.
So we can just leave it as string. Varchar is the MySQL way of saying, hey, this is a string. I'm just going to auto format this. So if I know it, we're supposed to have a route name. And
did he go over that? Did he say that?
I don't know if he said it explicitly.
Okay.
But, and if we forget, let me just grab a new window here. I look at sequelize. It looked like I had sequelize.org/master.
Oh, cool. Yep.
But down here, we can look at data types, and we can see string. Oh, look, it's a varchar 250.
Oh, wow. Okay.
String 1234 is a varchar like 1234 binary text. So this is definitely something where you're going to need to be able, you're going to have to reference the docs using sequelize. I had the docs open all day because like John said, sequelize is something you use when you initialize a project and you're setting up your database and stuff. But like once it's set up, you pretty much just don't touch it, and you can keep building your app for weeks or months or years, and until you get to a point where you have to go redefine your schema, you want to change your table, you can basically leave sequelize alone. So it's something that we'll use, but it's not like something you use all the time, and and it's changed since I did it. We didn't use the sequelize command line interface like just 8 months ago, so that was like all new for me today.
Wow. Yeah.
So okay, we got route name with data types of string. Help me out on this next one. So which part of this, what would be the column name? What would I need to replace complete with?
You would need to replace that with name if that's what you're doing there.
Exactly. So I'd say name. and
And
it's not a
then,
Boolean, right? We'd have to change it.
right. So that would be a string.
Hmm. And as John pointed out today, that is case sensitive. For some
Yep.
reason, it has to be capitalized, and that's also how it is in their docs too. You see, they capitalize that stuff. So,
Okay.
um, so we got route name. The next
And
one
then you
here.
just do role, colon, data type, string, because it's a varchar as well. And then age would be like an int or data types or something.
Yeah, data types. We're looking for an integer. Here we go.
Yeah, so dot integer.
Exactly. Boom.
Okay. Yep.
Copy pasta all day. If I can copy paste, if
Yeah.
it saves me, I'm all about it.
Yeah. Totally.
Force
And then
point.
that same thing there. Force points. Colon data types integer.
Bada bing.
Cool.
I like
And then
throw an auto format in there just so it looks good.
oh
Okay,
yeah.
and we don't have to do primary key because it sets the primary key. And the
Right.
last piece of this that is important for the way it's set up is we have to return the model that we built. So in this case, this is a model of
Right.
how character data will be stored. And basically, we're defining the schema of the table. But in terms of our model view controller paradigm thinking, we're defining the model. We're saying this is how our character data is going to be structured. These are the column names we're going to have. This is the types of data that goes in there. And MySQL is very particular about first we predefine how the data is going to look going in, and then we can put in and take out as much data as we want really quickly. And MySQL is really good at that.
Cool. Okay.
MongoDB, what we're going to learn in a couple weeks, it allows you to put in data in different forms. So we don't have to, we could put a different character that doesn't have a role, that doesn't have force points. I could mix up his methods and stuff. And if you're going to be putting in data of different types in different forms, and you don't want to have to keep making all kinds of models, maybe you don't know how the data is going to come in, then it's a job for MongoDB. And you could still put all your data in the same way, but that's kind of like where they differ from each other. And
right.
I also find Mongo and Mongoose easier to work with than sequelize. So
Yeah.
it's just a preference thing.
Cool.
And it depends, like, if you come into some application and they're using MySQL, then like you're going to be using MySQL,
Right.
But okay, so we got our character model defined, and trying to think through what else we might need to do. Let's go through these steps. It wants us
we did the database.
So we're here.
Model table.
Move references to the old ORM file and replace it with character. Where are references to that? Remove all references to it? Let's look at our server. Let's bring this over here. I'm going to close our index.js and our character model for now. You don't have any questions on this? It makes sense?
No, that's all good. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is boilerplate code too. Like, I wouldn't expect you to know that you have to export a function with this stuff and return it. It's like copy an old one, paste it in, update it for what you need.
Right.
So
exactly.
We'll close that model. So if we want to use, so we don't have any references to the ORM in our server, which means they're probably
Would be in our API
routes. Exactly.
And dependencies up there.
Yes, indeed. So we don't need this anymore. Comment them out.
And then we'd also comment 22.
Yeah.
Cool.
I comment them out rather than delete them because it's good to reference, like, what was this doing before? So you don't have to like build it all from scratch.
Cool.
So if we wanted to use our database and our models in here, do you remember how we require that, or what we do to require that?
Would it be like an app.get?
So before that, let's look at one of the ones we were working on in our routes and our API routes. This is the line.
Oh, right. So you would require it by var db
Yeah,
equals require.
I'm gonna put that one over there.
Yeah.
Okay, and so because this file structure could be different, I always want to check my relative path. So in API routes, I need to go out.
Okay.
And there, I'm just thinking, okay, so I actually need to go out of routes, out of app, into models. So we're going to say out of routes, out of app, into models. And I love the autocomplete for relative paths, because if I just typed it and I got it wrong, I wouldn't really know it. But like, because this is giving me models, I know that the models are there.
That's right. Okay.
So this is an interesting line. There's kind of a lot going on in it. We're requiring a folder, not a file. And normally, like if we're requiring this API routes in our server, we require the file to the .js, like we even give it the extension. So in here, where we require a folder, I think it's Express. This is an Express feature. Express says, if you give me a route to a folder, I'm going to open that folder and look for an index file.
Okay.
So what sequelize did for us was it made this index.js file. And this index.js file will handle the logic for creating the table and for as many models as we create. So if we ended up creating models in here for like Sith and a model in here for like Jedi, we still only need to link DB in here. And then we want to target the Sith model, we say db.sith or db.book or db. Whatever the model name is.
Okay.
So that's why we require, that's why we require the folder and not the file. And it's also why it'll break if your models are not in your models folder.
Okay.
So let me just delete these empty files so they don't mess with us.
That makes sense now. How you phrased that.
Yeah. Okay.
Where the folders where the files are. How to sort of navigate that. Yeah, it made sense.
Good. Sorry, let me look at some real quick. Just checking our time, making sure we're good.
Oh yeah, you're good.
Okay, clocked. Operation successful. What did I do? Tuesday. I clocked in at 4:48. Oh, it's just telling me what time it was. I was awfully confused. Okay, I'm just making sure I know when to stop at 5:38. So we got like another 15 minutes.
Cool.
So in here, if we want to search for a character.
I guess that was what was a little confusing for me today, was the so like on your API routes on your right there, like I got everything except for the db dot.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So like I got it all correct. Every piece of code, I wrote it all correctly, and either John like missed it or something, or it was like right at the time where he was looking somewhere else, or I don't know. But then he referred to it back on when we were explaining the example or the activity, and I saw it there, and I was like, oh, okay, that's what's going on. And I ran it, and it worked. And I was like, oh, okay. So
before we did like books,
sorry, could you right
find all or something, and that
like
was because we were requiring var books equals require the books, the relative path to the books model.
Okay.
And so since now we're not requiring our model, we've just brought in our DB, our whole database. We have to say DB to reference this variable. DB dot, in this case, what did we call our model? Character,
right.
And I think it is a convention to capitalize this. Make that capital C. I'm pretty
Okay.
sure in all of the models, let's take a look at the to-do model. That one's lowercase.
That one is,
See,
yeah.
but he capitalized it here. So he didn't
Yeah.
capitalize the folder name, but he capitalized the variable. So
Okay.
just to keep with that convention,
Yeah, totally.
capital C. And then in our API routes, if we want to reference this model, we say db.character.
Okay.
Instead of like in the books example, we didn't need that because we were just bringing the books in directly.
Okay.
That makes sense?
Yeah, no, totally.
Yeah.
And then for the online 8, does it always have to be dot dot, or is it because you're going out of
that's
said
the
API routes, then you're out?
So
Okay.
in this case, our model or our file, the relative, we're giving it the relative path from this file to where our models are. And so we have to come, right now we start in routes.
Mm-hmm.
So this dot dot slash brings us out of routes into app.
Into app.
And
Okay.
app is actually at the same level as models here.
Okay.
So we
So
got
then you need to go out again.
exactly. So we escape app. And if I'm ever unsure about my relative path, start with the dot dot. I mean, you can start with the dot slash and just see what's here.
Okay.
Well, in our where are we? In our routes folder, the only other file there that I don't have, if I dot slash, like it gives me HTML routes because that's in here. That's the only
Because
other
that's the
thing there
only other
is.
one there is. Okay.
So I know I got to come out one level, and then it
Right.
tells me, okay, my options are public and routes.
Okay,
Well,
cool.
that's not what I need, right? So let's come
Right.
out
So you gotta
one
go out
more
again.
level, and then now it's giving me
Oh.
all of this. So I can click on models, and if I wanted to keep going, I could
Yeah.
use slash and choose the individual model.
Yep.
But we
Cool.
don't have to do that because of
Right.
what sequelize does for us. So
Okay.
our DB, our database that we're dealing with essentially is looking at our model's index file, and then the
Right.
index file is doing all kinds of stuff for us.
Cool.
This is also the point in the course where it's like you can't expect to understand every single line of code with the speed
Right.
at which we go. It's like
Yeah.
they're going to be giving boilerplate code. When it comes time for the project, he's going to give you like code to like there's a couple different things we'll do, but like a big one is like authenticator. It gives us like a way to like log in with a user and check their password, and it will like anonymize, or it will hash that password into like, so when you install the middleware properly, it's like you won't even be able to see users' passwords. Like they get stored encrypted and they get pulled out and checked encrypted, and it's like they're not going to teach us how to build that.
Yeah.
Firebase has one. If
Yep.
you ever go like Firebase Authenticator,
Yep.
authentication, and what's cool is like if you use the Firebase Authenticator, let me see if I can just get an image. It's got logins pre-built. So if you connect it to your app, people can log in with their Gmail, their Facebook, their Twitter account, their GitHub account. It like has pre-built things that people can log in with, like rather than you having to code every one. It's got stuff like send an email if they forget their password. Like it handles all that for you, so you don't have to build it. But so if I was doing an app on my own and I wanted authentication, like users to log in and have it safe, I would probably use the Google Auth one from Firebase.
Yep.
But John will give us one too. But
so what is that? So project 2 is coming up, and then it's like what, like
so
that sort of stuff.
Yeah, it's so project 2 is, I mean, all the projects are pretty similar. The individual requirements vary a little bit. This time you have to use a MySQL database. You have to use sequelize. You probably have to use something we haven't seen before.
Yeah.
Like another new library. But as far as like coming up with good ideas goes, I feel like you're pretty much in the same boat that you are with the first project in that, excuse me, it's like you have to build a application. Like, I mean, a full stack application, which the first one we use Firebase as our backend. This time it's like there's more code, but essentially, I mean, when they do Firebase, they don't really consider it full stack because all this requests and stuff is just everything is happening on the front end, but you're really connecting a front end and using Firebase as your remote database. So it's not like the capabilities in terms of like, what do I want to build? Like nothing really changes. So, anyway, if you have good ideas, keep thinking about them. The
Cool.
other thing is, I think it's important to work with different people and work with smart people, but also like I picked like the smartest kids in the class for my last project, and it was actually the most painful one for me because
Yeah.
it was like too many cooks in the kitchen kind of a situation.
Yeah.
Having people that you can get along with is like the most important thing. So
Yeah, for
and
sure.
I'd also tell you, like, if you want to like slack some people now in the meantime, just like message them, be
Yeah.
like, hey, you want to be in group 2? And that way, like when John's like, okay, pick your groups.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Totally.
can't hurt,
Totally. Cool.
So how do you feel about this code here on the right? Like you understand how this is working to do
Yes,
find all?
except for when they added stuff in between the braces after find all.
Okay. This is not a good example of that, but I can find one. I think I was
Yeah,
working.
because it was like, all right, cool, I got it all, and then they started typing stuff in the middle there, and I was like, wait a minute,
Let me
what's
look
going on?
where it was.
It might have
This
been.
this is too old. I don't know where I was doing my work, but we can. Oh, I'm in the class repo right now. I'm in your repo. Okay, if I
Oh,
have
okay.
one, add folder. It's in my D, my TA, my full stack lesson plans. Let's just add sequelize so we don't have too much. But yeah, this is just like a sneak peek. So sequelize is the
Cool.
last project you have, and then
Yep.
16 and 17 is project 2.
Yep.
Then we learn Mongo and Mongoose, which is the other database stuff.
Yeah.
Then we learn React, and you're pretty much done. Regionalized content is like they teach this class all over the country. So like in
Yeah.
San Diego, there's lots of jobs that want Java. So like we teach like just like a intro to Java. Like you don't have to
Okay.
do anything with it, but that's like. And then we learn some stuff about general computer science, algorithms, and computing the speed of things. And
Cool.
but anyway, that's pretty much it. And then your other projects. So it's like you guys have done most of the learning. This is like I'd say like these 4 chapters are probably the hardest to just
Yeah.
swallow. And then Mongoose, React is tricky, but is kind of fun.
Yeah.
And that's like the last big piece. Mongoose will be different syntax, but it's like just like MySQL and sequelize again.
Cool.
It's like a database and a database ORM that's built for
Right.
it. So um, anyway,
Cool.
so you guys are almost there, man. This is the last. You're in the home
It's
stretch.
crazy. Yeah.
So here, this is where I was doing all my work. My routes, my API routes. No, not there. Number 8. Show me my routes. Okay, here we go. This is what I was looking for. So let's just take a look at these. We can close the Star Wars example for now, huh?
Yeah, I'd say we're good.
So I like to make it big, like as possible. I even hit F11 to like go full screen just so I can
Yeah.
have space. So our a route for getting all of the to-dos, we just do a db.todo, our model, find all. And then we have a .then function, db to do. You probably see like result here more often.
Right.
Results. Okay, so the get route is pretty straightforward until it gets a little trickier down here. So let's say we wanted to get one to do by its ID. So we want to route like this by its ID. So in this case, we're using app. So we can say app.get rather than like router. Sometimes we're using router, but in this example, we were still using Express the old way with app. So we can say app.get, and then we need to give it our route, and our route's going to be the same as this route.
Right.
But it's a get route to it and not a delete. That
Right.
took me a while to get my head around the fact that we could use the same URL or the same path for multiple types of requests.
Yeah, I guess I just didn't really question it. I just kind of went along with it. I was like, oh, these all look the same. Okay, whatever.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
yeah.
then we have a function, request response, and then some curly braces. Give us some space.
So I guess now that I'm looking at it again,
Yeah.
but in between those braces, that's like the actual function.
Yeah. So
Okay.
um, the express takes in a path, and then the second parameter is a function. So since
Yep.
we're passing in a function as a parameter to our app.get, .get is actually a function, right? Because if we
Yep.
said like .get, that's calling a function, and then
Yep.
we're passing in param1 is the route in this case, and param2 is going to be the callback function. So
Mm-hmm.
in our example, I showed you like a named callback function that you could pass in. This is what we call an anonymous function. Like it's got no name, but
Right.
still I'm writing the whole function itself that is the callback function essentially.
Okay.
Um, so this is the callback for the app.get. So inside our app.get, we want to, let's say let's just pseudocode it out, like find the to do with the matching ID, right?
Mm-hmm.
So help me out here. If I want to use our to do model, what do I
Right.
type?
So we'll find the matching ID. So it would be DB capitalized to do dot was it I guess find all or find find all.
There's also, I think, a sequelize method called, let's look it up, querying find one.
Find all, find all.
Okay, it's not on this page. There used to be a find one. Maybe they deprecated it and now they just use find one. I don't want to burn too much of our time.
Oh, no worries. Yeah.
We're running out. Yeah, I guess we're actually at 50 minutes. Man, it goes fast. I thought these
It
were going to take a
does.
long time, but they fly by, huh? So
Yeah.
rather than type this out together, let's just like go over one of the more complicated one.
Yeah, for sure.
This would be find all, and we would say where,
Mm-hmm.
and we have to say ID equals
Like rect dot
this.
param.
Exactly. And
Okay.
so the way you do that is if you have to do an equals, we do another object, and we say
Okay.
ID rec.params.id,
Dot ID.
and
Okay.
then you can do your callback function.
Right. So then it'd be that function,
That
all that
whole
right down there.
piece.
Yep.
Exactly.
And that's giving it back in a JSON format.
Yeah. So the important thing is like you want to say where something is something. It's like I can't do that in one line, so I got to make another object and put it
Okay.
inside. And so that's like how the destroy works too. We say where our ID is the rec.params.id. And
Cool.
then this one gets a little more complicated, the update, because you got to say what columns do I want to update in our database.
Right.
I want to update our text. What do I want to update it to? Well, I want it to be the whatever they submitted with the body.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to make the complete whatever they did, the rec.body.complete. Then you do a comma. So instead of this, we just end dot then. So in this case, we got to say, hey, update this, and then here is our where clause. You still got to tell it where you want to update, because this is just saying this doesn't point to the record. We need
Right. That just says you want to update it, and it's not telling it where.
Exactly.
Right. Cool. Okay.
Exactly. So
It's like two operations inside one that's inside a big one that's inside other things, and yeah.
and if we think about like the let's say MySQL update statement, see if there's a good example that's not too hard. I like W3 schools. Update table name set. So let's just like look at this piece, because even though we put it in a different format, like we got to give it all this information.
Right.
So update table name is coming from this. We're saying, hey, update our to-do, like use our to-do model and give it an update. So even though this points to the model, like our model creates the table. So this is
Mm-hmm.
essentially pointing to our table and telling it we want to update. So that's this line. And then we say set column 1 equal value 1, column 2 equal value 2. That's this. We're setting column 1 value 1, column 2 value 2. And then the last
Oh,
piece is
cool.
our
Okay.
where condition, where we got to say where our condition, our ID equals rec.body.id.
Cool.
So if you ever have a hard time with these queries or figuring out how to build them, like go back to the MySQL, make it work in Workbench if you want, or just like we didn't even need to make it work. We just pulled up our example and just make sure
Right.
you're giving it all the pieces it needs. Yeah,
Yeah.
is a good way to
That
go about that.
that makes a lot. That clears a lot of stuff up.
Cool.
Uh,
I want to be
yeah.
helpful. I
Yeah.
want.
No, that's great. That actually does. That's really cool.
So, yeah.
What was I gonna say? I think that's it. Oh, I guess yeah. So I like what you just kind of cleared up for me was the columns,
Yeah.
because I wasn't sure. Like I had no idea what he was talking about, what column, all that sort of stuff. I was looking down at the
Sure. It's
bottom
hard to pay
right.
attention the whole time.
Exactly. Like
Yeah.
I was looking down at like the bottom right, at like where it says like line 70, column 24, and I'm like, is that what he's talking about? That can't be what he's talking about. So no, that cleared up a whole bunch of stuff. So cool.
Okay, man. Well, I'm gonna Slack you uh, the link to the student eval form.
Yep.
If you don't mind filling that out for me,
Sure.
and I have to actually fill one out also. Get my own form. And
Cool.
as always, feel free to write our questions down, Slack me your questions.
Awesome.
Feel free to message me anytime. So, yeah, Kobe, good job, dude. You're crushing it, man.
Cool, man. Appreciate it. Thanks.
No problem. Have a good night, man.
Yeah, you too. We'll see you tomorrow.
Sounds good, brother. See you, man.
All right. See ya.
Bye. Close this.